humans come from on this earth? If you are also told since childhood that humans were first monkeys and that monkeys later became humans, then just wait a moment. Was it really like that? Or were we just told an incomplete story while the truth is something else entirely? Because if humans did not evolve from monkeys, then how did they come to be on this earth? This question is much like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? If you say the egg came first, how did it come into being without a chicken? And if you say the chicken came first, how was it born without an egg? Now, just imagine applying this same question to humans. You say you were born to your parents. But where did your parents come from? They had parents too, and so the chain continued. So the question is, who was the first link in this chain? Was it a man or a woman? And if both are needed for the birth of a child, then how did the very first human come to be? So to find the answer to this question, we will have to go back about 66 million years in a time machine, when there was no trace of humans on this earth, and it was ruled solely by large, ferocious, giant dinosaurs. Then one day, a massive meteor struck Earth, releasing energy so tremendous, it was equivalent to that of millions of atom bombs. Now, in the wake of this explosion, all the dinosaurs that had ruled the Earth for about 150 million years were killed. And thus, from the collision of the giant meteor, 75% of the animals and plants on Earth were completely destroyed. And this was the moment after which the human race emerged on Earth. And today, like the dinosaurs, we have become the rulers of this planet. But the arrival of humans on Earth was not that simple. At some point, this question must have crossed your mind too. When and from where did humans come to Earth? What did they look like? Were they like us? Or did they look different? And how did they evolve? Generally, we all know that our ancestors were Homo sapiens who lived in forests and fed on flowers, leaves, and meat. But how much truth and how much falsehood is in these claims? Let's understand it in detail in this video and find out if humans were first monkeys, primitive men, or something else entirely. So friends, as we told you, about 66 million years ago, after the meteor collision with Earth ended the dinosaurs, along with them, the giant trees, animals, and all life on Earth was wiped out. Because the devastation caused by the meteor was no ordinary catastrophe. It was as horrific as millions of atomic bombs, which caused the forest fires to burn for many years, and nothing could survive. At that time, no birds flew in the sky. Due to the horrific collision of the meteor with the Earth, it wasn't water flowing in the rivers and seas, but only fire. And instead of greenery, there were only flames of fire on Earth. Animals, trees, and plants had all turned to ash. Then, a long night fell upon the Earth, which lasted for years. But even in the midst of that dark night, life did not give up. Because deep within caves beneath the Earth's layers, some creatures, even smaller and weaker than insects, were still breathing, who had managed to save themselves from the meteor's destruction. These creatures were neither intelligent nor powerful, but they had a spark that no one else had. That spark was the will to live, which allowed them to save their lives from the meteor by hiding in the depths of caves. But now they faced another serious problem for survival. Because on Earth, there was no food left for them to survive, no water, and not even the most essential thing for life, oxygen. But it is said that one who has the will to live will find a way to stay alive, no matter what. And that's what these small creatures did. They began to eat and digest the ash itself, and somehow they slowly began to live. And later on, these were the creatures from within whom the seed of humanity sprouted, and the Earth got its most intelligent being, the human. But this journey wasn't completed suddenly. It took centuries, beginning with the emergence of greenery on an Earth that had become a ball of fire. Friends, the story of humanity's arrival on Earth has now reached a point where a new, magical wave of life rises from the ashes of death. It seems so magnificent and magical, as if some invisible power picked up a brush and started to paint the Earth again. About 65 million years ago, during the Paleogene period, after centuries of silence, time slowly passed and the seasons changed. The Earth's spire slowly began to subside again, and the sky started to clear. The dust settles, the first ray of the sun falls on the Earth, and as if a magician has waved a wand, life awakens again. After many centuries, as the sky cleared, drops of water fell to the Earth as rain. The small creatures living on Earth get water for the first time in centuries, and their thirst is quenched. Just imagine what would happen to you if you didn't get water for a day. But many generations of these creatures didn't get a single drop of water. Then one day, when they got this water, that rainwater also quenched the Earth's thirst. Raindrops started falling from the sky, first slowly, then in heavy streams. These drops soaked the burnt ash of the Earth, and wherever water collects, the first stirrings of life begin. First, water fills small places, forming lakes, and in those lakes, tiny seeds begin to sprout. Slowly, the heat subsides, then cool winds begin to blow, and a major shift occurs in the climate. The Earth now becomes cool and damp. Meanwhile, the ash and rocks from the meteor's devastation begin to dissolve in the flowing water, and soil starts to form. The sun's rays fall on this new soil. Oxygen mixes into the air, and this soil slowly begins to become fertile. Plants begin to grow on this fertile land. At first, these plants spread like a green carpet of small ferns, then flowering plants, then fruit-bearing plants, and then these plants begin to grow into giant trees. And so, the Earth begins to fill with greenery again. Now forests return to the Earth, and the sun's rays once again filter through the leaves. Thus, greenery is reborn on Earth from the ashes of death caused by the meteor's devastation. The greenery of life begins to breathe on Earth. But now the question arises, what happened to those small creatures that survived by eating ash? How did they become mammals? And then how did humans come to be? Let's turn to the next page of this video and find out how these small creatures became big and whether humans evolved from monkeys or if the truth is something else entirely. When greenery returned to Earth with water, air, and sun rays, our tiny ancestral creatures, who survived by eating ash and were hidden in burrows and caves out of fear of death, also came out. But when they came out, they were no longer small insects, but had already become mammals. As generations passed, these creatures had evolved into forms like mice, shrews, lizards, snakes, and cats. They were now surviving not on ash, but by eating insects and creatures smaller than themselves. These are what we call scribblers today. These scribblers emerged into the new greenery of the forest. Their fur was soft, their eyes were bright, and this was the superpower of mammals that set them apart from the giant reptiles that existed before the meteor devastation. These scribblers used to catch insects, but now they had also started tasting the fruits of new plants. This magic of Earth's redevelopment began 65 million years ago. These mammals slowly changed from generation to generation, and then they also learned to fly and swim in water. These small mammals slowly began to adapt into countless forms. Some learned to swim and later became whales and dolphins. Some learned to fly and later became bats and birds. Some started climbing trees and became primates. And some walked on the ground and evolved into elephants, horses, lions, bears, and tigers. Yes, this entire kingdom arose from that one tiny scribbler. But it didn't all happen suddenly. About 55 million years ago, the first primates, our very ancient ancestors, were born in the dense forests of Africa and Asia. They lived in trees, ate fruits, swung, and leaped. Some of these we know today as lemurs and tarsiers. Then, 20 million years ago, especially during the Miocene, Pliocene, and Pleistocene epochs, the evolution and diversification of mammals on Earth accelerated. During this time, climate change, continental drift, and environmental shifts gave rise to thousands of new species. Then, around 20 million years ago, during the Miocene epoch, a second massive explosion of mammals occurred on Earth. This was the time when the descendants of that one tiny scribbler were taking on different forms. It was such a powerful wave of evolution that a stampede broke out on Earth. Horses learned to run fast from their ancestors. Strong animals like rhinoceroses evolved. The ancestors of today's elephants, like mastodons, had taken on gigantic forms. Species of whales and dolphins had also evolved in the sea. Predator families like dogs, cats, bears, and hyenas also emerged in this sequence. From among them, ferocious predators like the saber-toothed cats were born. And the largest, Indricotherium, also thrived. It was many times larger than elephants, although it is now extinct. In this way, more than 4,000 species of mammals evolved from the forests to the grasslands of Africa and Asia, which formed the foundation of today's biodiversity. But in this great race, the most special was a small branch of monkey-like primates. About 20 million years ago, these primates evolved in Africa. They had the ability to grip things tightly with their hands, and most importantly, they also had a distinct capacity for understanding. Yes, this is where the real development of the brain began. Because of this intelligence, they lived in small groups, jumped from trees, and ate fruits after peeling them. Gradually, these primates split into two large groups: New World monkeys in South America and Old World monkeys in Africa and Asia. But during all these developments, no one had any inkling that the evolution of Earth's true rulers, humans, was yet to come. Among these 4,000 species, the most special was a new group of primates, the apes, Vanar. Their teeth were large, their jaws were strong, and their brains were bigger than monkeys'. They lived in trees, but even there they tried to move upright. Then, several branches of these apes were formed: gibbons, orangutans, gorillas, and chimpanzees. And in the evolutionary chain of apes, the last to arrive were the hominins, the branch of humans. It was from this branch that the greatest development on Earth occurred. This is also where human life began, whose arrival changed the very face of the Earth. But human evolution, as we have seen, began with another destruction. In fact, about 7 million years ago, a big, mysterious change began in Africa. The climate there began to change again, but this change was not sudden. Due to the movement in the Earth's tectonic plates, giant mountain ranges began to rise. These mountains changed the path of the winds, so the moist air could no longer reach inner Africa. The result was that the dense forests there began to dry up. Trees started falling on their own, and in some places, they even caught fire spontaneously. The same era that it had seen twice before began to return to Earth, one that always pointed towards destruction. But this time, it was not destruction, but the beginning of humans' first appearance on Earth. This destruction of the forest lasted for a few decades, but then the weather changed and heavy rains began, which continued for many years. During this change, animals living in trees came down to the ground and began to learn to live on the ground. Many years later, the weather changed again, the rain stopped, and the sun returned to the land. As a result, grasslands began to grow in various places. Now, the creatures that used to swing on trees started walking on this grass on four legs. But one species stood out from all the rest. One of the ape species was Sahelanthropus judensis, which we consider the beginning of the human lineage. Compared to other animals, Sahelanthropus had a slightly larger brain and knew how to walk on two legs. Although it still looked like a monkey, its skull indicated an upright posture. And then came the moment when it walked alone on the ground on two legs for the first time, slightly stooped. And this was the moment when nature allowed it to take its first step towards becoming human. So, after hearing this story, you must have understood so far that monkeys were indeed the ancestors of humans. But it's not right to believe anything so quickly because our scientists have a different opinion about it. An opinion they have formed from their decades of incredible discoveries. Whenever we try to understand the evolution of humans, a theory always comes up that monkeys were the ancestors of humans. It is said that humans were once monkeys, and over time they changed to become humans. But upon looking through science books, it's clear that it's not written anywhere that monkeys were the ancestors of humans. So now the question is, where did this idea come from? And why are humans compared to monkeys? In fact, behind the evolution of humans is the theory of evolution by the great naturalist Charles Darwin. He said that organisms changed themselves according to their needs, and this process continued. But there was a misunderstanding here. Darwin never said that humans evolved from monkeys. While explaining evolution, he had only given an example that humans and monkeys might have had a common ancestor. But the world caught on to this, and the myth spread. The reality is that humans and monkeys evolved in parallel. But this happened in different places and in different ways. This is why there are similarities as well as many differences between us. This proves that we both had a common ancestor, but monkeys are not our species. In this sequence of biological evolution, a new species was born under the influence of different seasons and climates. This event occurred about 4 million years ago in the forests of the eastern part of Africa, in Ethiopia and Tanzania. This was the species called Australopithecus afarensis. Finding this species was no less than a movie action scene. In fact, it was November 24, 1974. In the scorching sun in the Hatter region of Ethiopia, American anthropologist Donald Johanson and Tom Gray's team were anxiously searching for something. They had already dug the ground with shovels, pickaxes, and machinery when one of their assistants shouted loudly, "Sir, come here quickly." Donald, who was drinking his tea, left it on the table and ran from the camp to his assistant. They were blown away by what they saw there. They found some parts of a skeleton amidst the sand and soil, a hand, foot, ribs, and a piece of a skull. They immediately took it to the camp lab. After researching day and night for several days, scientists found that this fossil skeleton is about 3.2 million years old. It includes about 40% of a female skeleton. The most surprising thing about it was that this creature's hip and leg bones were curved. This indicated that it could stand upright and walk on two legs. But its arms were long and its fingers were curved, which meant it could still climb trees quickly. This was not the skeleton of an ordinary monkey. This was a creature that was neither completely a monkey nor completely a human, but rather a blend of both. Then they named that fossil Lucy. Lucy was named after the famous Beatles song Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, which was playing at the discovery site at the time. Lucy's species served as the missing link between monkeys and humans. This showed that monkeys are not our species. Rather, the human species is only similar to Lucy's species and to monkey's species. Lucy was the one who climbed trees like a monkey and walked upright like a human. But the real superpower of humans was the ability to explore and the power to think. Now the story gets even more interesting from here. Lucy's discovery showed us that the human journey was not a straight line, but a complex, winding family tree. Some branches died out over time, and some continued to grow. Lucy was a very important branch of that tree. Some branches died out over time, and some continued to grow. Lucy was a very important branch of that tree. From Lucy's branch, about 700,000 years ago, species like Homo heidelbergensis emerged, which evolved from Homo erectus. And this species later became modern humans. After finding Lucy, the morale of the scientists was boosted, and they started the work of finding the first human species even more rapidly. Time passed, and finally, our scientists found what we were looking for: Homo sapiens. Their fossils were found in the Jebel Irhoud caves in Morocco, Africa. After research, it was discovered that they are about 300,000 years old and are the earliest human ancestors, who looked about 70% like us. But what made them special was the power of their minds. Their brain volume was between 1,300 and 1,400 cubic centimeters, and it was not just large, but also creative. Meanwhile, scientists found another special fossil, which belonged to a species about 200,000 years old, Homo habilis. Homo habilis means handyman, that is, the human who makes tools. They were given this name because, during the discovery, scientists found tools made by carving stone. Homo habilis were the first beings to start making tools. But friends, all this was just evidence of finding the first generation of humans. The real story begins here. So our story about humans does not end here. Rather, the story of human evolution begins here. How did the Homo sapiens species become early humans? How did they discover fire and weapons? And then how did those early humans become modern humans? Only after knowing this will you be able to understand the real story of human life. How Homo sapiens learned to survive living among animals in the jungle. How did they develop a brain superior to animals? And how did they then lay the foundations of society, language, and civilization? To find out, don't forget to watch part 2 of this video, the link for which you will find in the video description. And before you go, if you like this journey, Please like and share this video, and subscribe to the channel so that you are the first to know how humans finally became humans. Thank you for staying with us until the end.